Hey everyone, welcome to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird.
I'm Marcia Parker.
And we're here to review the second and unfortunately, apparently final season of The Exorcist. I think we actually reviewed the first season.
We did.
Yeah. It's been a long time.
I think we did first, middle, and end.
Yeah,
so
we were on board for that one. And I should have been on board for this one, but I had to cut the cord, so I wasn't able to watch it until later when I finally got Hulu. So when I got Hulu, I watched two things first. I watched the second season of Preacher, and I also watched the second season of The Exorcist.
Mm-hmm.
So I was excited to talk about The Exorcist. I knew Marcia was the only one that actually watched through it, but you did it at the time, right?
I did.
Now, does that mean that you really enjoyed it? I mean, let's start there, because we always go with our overall thoughts, and I'll have you go first here.
I was very intrigued with the cast. I like the setting. I like the premise. I thought the beginning was much like the first one, was a little slow. But they had a lot of intrigue. They left a lot of things open where you didn't know who was going to be possessed. You didn't know what was going to be happening with the Catholic priest and the cardinals and that storyline. And the main priest with Thomas and Marcus, they were on the run. So it was all very exciting. You had 3 different paths and you didn't know how they were going to meet and what it would mean. And when it finally did come together, it paid off. It was a great payoff all the way through. I'm sad that the series is over.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would have done well if they just kept going with it, but maybe with everything else that's going on, I know there's a lot of shows that are going to the wayside because the horror trend is happening, and if you're not grasping everybody's attention, you're gonna fade out quickly. So
yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it like you. I thought there were a little bit of pacing issues, like you said, especially towards the front. What the show was, I was fearing turning into was a guessing game for the first few episodes, because this one specifically, there were so many kids, because it was a foster home being run by John Cho, playing Andy. And he had just recently lost his wife, who was helping raise all these kids. So he's now under investigation by a lady from Child Services who happens to be an ex of his. So it's kind of a convenient storytelling thing.
right.
But it does make for good drama, if convenient drama. And then, so there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kids plus a new one that comes in at one point, I believe. So that's a lot of possible possessees, to fake out. And one of the kids, there's an interesting twist later on. Guys, this is going to be a spoiler review. We'll try and hold off on the spoilers till towards the end, but I mean, who are we kidding? If you were going to watch this show, you would have watched it by now.
Right.
So anyway, I continuing on, I did enjoy the show. I actually thought the strongest part was definitely Father Tomas and Father Marcus. Their acting was amazing. I loved Andy's acting too. John Cho did a wonderful job.
Yeah.
I thought the love interest, quote unquote, was a kind of weak. I liked all the kids too. So I thought largely the cast was great. We'll get into them specifically, but yeah, overall I really enjoyed this season, and it's a bummer that that we're not going to get any more because it ends on a bit of a cliffhanger. So, but yeah, so let's get into the story. Did you like how the story unfolded?
I did. I did think it was slow at first, but I feel like they did open it up kind of like a flower blooming. I like the idea of the demon. So the story with the demon was that there was like this. They're on an island, and the history is like every so often there's a family who like ends up killing each other. One of the biggest stories was this one house with his father, and they didn't know it was possession at the time, but all of a sudden he came home one day and he like killed his whole family and a bunch of other kids that were spending the night. And then himself, and nobody knew what happened. He was a great guy. He did all the right things, and then all of a sudden he snapped. Later down the road, you find out he was possessed. It was a demon, and this demon potentially has like possessed someone in Andy's home. And of course you're like, well, it's gotta be Andy, but you don't know that right away. So I like that slow reveal of the demon. I like the backstory of the demon. I like it wasn't the same demon that they're chasing around. And even though he was, didn't they make a reference that he did know Marcus at one point? Like Marcus was familiar, like he was the same demon.
Yeah, well, it felt like, it was the same one that was messing with him and his protege earlier on. But I wasn't really clear on that by the end. But yeah, I mean, there was some kind of tie there, but it made for, interesting watching at least.
I love the backstory of Andy and the kids. Each kid had a very unique story. Of course, they're foster kids, so they all had bad backstories. But they within their own faults, they were able to grow together and really create this like really unique and powerful family that had each other's backs. Even when they were messing with each other, they still really, you could still feel that care. And it really made for good watching.
Yeah. The acting specifically I thought was strong, as I mentioned earlier. All of them except for the love interest, but the actual way that characters interplayed with each other and they had specific relationships, and the father was obviously doing his best post, losing his wife. And it just ended up being a strong foundation for a show to sort of base itself on. And we didn't even get the priests entering that picture until probably episode 4.
Yeah.
They were on their own mission, which we were following, where we were finding out that Father Tomas, is sort of developing his ability to go into the minds of those that are possessed. And Father Marcus finds out and is warning him all the way through that it's a bad idea. And of course, he ends up getting caught, in a loop later on in the last episode, I believe, or maybe the second to last episode. But when stuff is going down, he is unavailable because he's locked in his own mindscape by a demon, because he's been, trying to hone this ability and been arguing with Father Marcus, if I can do this, the God gave me this gift. And he's like, you don't know that. So it just was a really interesting point of contention between the two priests, and it ended up, of course, playing out as a big plot point later on. So I dug that. I dug how the story sort of played everything out. I liked that while they tried to make you think it was going to be one of the kids, it ended up being Andy.
Yeah.
And the way they revealed that was by revealing that one of the kids wasn't actually there at all.
Yes.
I thought that was awesome.
Yes. They did a really good job of making you think that she was there, and then realizing there was something strange about that whole thing. And then when they finally did reveal it, it was just kind of like, whoa, because it was almost out of nowhere. Like you knew something was going to be revealed, but you weren't expecting that.
Well, they held it until episode 4.
Yeah.
And so the first 3.5 episodes, it seemed like he had just another kid that didn't like to come out of her room, that would hide under this grotesque bag that she had painted a face on, that like made her feel better but made the audience completely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so, it's really interesting, and it's, I'd have to watch it again, but the fact that no one ever refers to her is an interesting thing, and I would like to see how they accomplish it, because by the time they reveal it, I'm like, wow, did they never refer to her? So I guess that's good filmmaking, because I didn't feel tricked. I felt like unobservant, Well, I feel like whenever
right before Andy would go and check on her, do anything, like, he didn't say anything dressed up to the kids, but the way they would transition, like, you wouldn't think anything of it. Like, he would talk to the other kids, and they're like, we're gonna go around and play, okay, and then he'd go, well, I should go see if I can get her to come down. So it was like always an afterthought, or like whenever somebody else would leave the room. So They did it really well, I thought. Like, you just didn't notice that they weren't. And that's a really hard thing to do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, I agree, especially on a long form telling of a story, you know. But I will say, it was very Exorcist-y. I mean, there was a lot of cool stuff that is what's scary in the movie and in the first season, where the demon knows things. I always love that when bad guys know things and reveal things about characters in front of other characters. That causes extra drama. And this is done all the time because demons just know things.
Yeah.
And they can act like all of your dead relatives are there with them because they somehow have this knowledge of the undead, or the knowledge of the dead, rather. And so it was really interesting and horrific, obviously. Nothing I didn't think it rose to the level of the scariness that the first season had.
That's true. I think there were moments where I was taken back, like when he first when they first revealed that he was crazy pants, and then when he turned on Rose and was like going to murder her or the children, that got to me. And then again when they were all in the woods and he pulled those kids to the side and he was going to sacrifice them, that got to me a little bit. But at the same time, like you're saying, it was more about Andy and his story and not so much of the demon. Like they made the demon kind of separated from him. Like they revealed to the demon more of like his wife telling him what to do and him just doing it, versus the demon like really like taking hold and turning him into a completely different person.
Right. Yeah.
He was more of a puppet.
No, I agree, and they did portray that very well. But yeah, I thought the we all have to talk about the effects. Again, I didn't think it was as good as the first one because the progression on the daughter in the first one was so much more gradual, but so much more apparent, and she looked so much more bruised and hurt. And I don't know why they didn't go quite that route with the father in this one. Like, he did look bad later, but he didn't look the same kind of bad. He looked makeup bad rather than actually affected and bruised bad.
Right.
What about you?
Yeah, I kind of got more of like that the exchange, or like, I want to say Amityville, like Ryan Reynolds kind of bad, versus like you were saying in the first one, like there's no contortionism, there was no like real death like feel to it, or like the draining and the chapped lips and the just the brokenness.
The bruising,
like you didn't feel like his body was being broken over and over again, or that his soul was getting broken over and over again. It felt like more like he was being possessed to do what he was doing. It felt more of a possession ghost story than a possession demon story.
I agree with that, actually. Yeah, no, I think that's not an unfair analysis, because it was something that was just haunting the home, So it did come off that way, which is weird, And I guess they're like, well, a demon can act like sort of a haunting too. Or they were just like, we can use some haunting tropes for demon things. But I think demon is scary enough and scarier when it's not using haunted tropes. Like the mental games that it plays and the physical extremes that it brings its hosts to do and things like that. Like, that's scary. You don't need it to be sort of a ghostly kind of avenue or feel to it. You know?
And what made it different on this too is like usually especially in the first one and other exorcism movies or exorcist movies, is the demon is hurting the person they're possessing and kind of hurting other people, but not really. Like, the focus is on the person they're possessed, and it was outwardly just using him to hurt other people. And I think that's where you're feeling that disconnect, because it doesn't feel like a demon. Maybe if it was like, Fallen, if we were watching Denzel Washington in Fallen. But maybe. Even then, like, it didn't feel like the same show we watched this season.
Not
before.
Exactly, no. It felt like it was kind of there.
It was. And I think in a lot of different aspects, like the aspect with the Cardinals and stuff, where they were the demons had possessed all the cardinals, and the Vatican was being taken over, and you got to see those grins and the snarkiness, and they're like ha-has, and
That got squashed by episode 3.
yeah. And then you had the sister, that old sister that was kept up. She was possessed and chained up, and they were using her for like kind of like an exorcist experiment and fortune teller type deal. And I thought that was more reflective of what we were looking for out of the season than the actual possession with Andy.
Yeah, I agree. That would have been interesting. I did like that all of the pompous sort of religious higher ups that were all possessed got pretty quickly, because I wasn't a huge fan of that storyline, but it was what it was. But I was happy to see how it turned out, and it introduced us to the character of Father Marcus's protege that we didn't realize was his protege until later on, because he thought she had been dead for years.
Yep.
But it turns out, no, she's been out there sort of continuing his legacy. And so that was a fun sort of drama beat to see play out later in the season.
I kind of like the idea of a rogue exorcist kind of going around just killing demons and being badass, and that it was a woman at that, a strong, powerful woman that like kind of took everybody else to shame. I like that.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah, it was pretty good. While it was still a strong season, it wasn't nearly as strong as the first season, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But it is worth your time. Guys, if you have Hulu, just jump on and finish it. If you haven't watched the first season, watch it. If you haven't seen the second, you might as well just watch it. It was good, and it continues the Marcus and Tomas story. And it does leave you on a bit of a cliffhanger on that, but it's also some really good Marcus acting that cliffhanger, so it's worth checking out. I'd be interested to hear your guys' opinion. Have you seen it? What did you think of it, if so, and does this make you want to watch it more or less? Or, let us know. Any final thoughts from you, Marcia?
I'm sad to see it go. I think it would have been cool to see that continue and see what other stories that they could have created with it, but I think they ended on a high note, and I also agree, like, if you haven't watched it, just take the time. I mean, 2 seasons, watch it, have fun with it, and let us know what you think.
Yeah. So, guys, let us know in the comments down below. Until next time, though, I've been Cecil Laird.
I'm Marcia Parker.
Special thanks to all of our patrons out there. We greatly appreciate you. Click the link in the description box if you want to join those ranks. But until next time, remember, stay scared.